The massive ship called Nexus Prime floated silently in the dark space between two distant stars. It was bigger than most cities on Earth, with silver walls that gleamed under the light of nearby suns. Inside this giant vessel, the most brilliant minds from across the galaxy had gathered for their monthly meeting. Professor Zethkari walked slowly down the long hallway toward the main conference room. His tall, thin body moved with grace, despite having 4 arms and crystal-like skin that sparkled blue and green. 3 eye stalks on top of his head turned in different directions, watching everything around him. He had been the leader of the Galactic Academic Council for over 200 years, and today's meeting was very important. The conference room was enormous, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. In the center sat a round table made of some material that looked like liquid starlight. Holographic chairs surrounded it, each one designed for a different type of alien body. As Professor Zethkari entered, he saw that most of his colleagues had already arrived. Dr. Veltara from the Sigma Collective sat in her mechanical chair, her insect-like body covered in shiny black armor. Her 4 arms moved constantly as she organized her research files, and her large compound eyes reflected the room's soft lighting. She made soft clicking sounds with her mandibles, a sign that she was excited about today's presentation. Across from her, Dr. Quinther floated in a special container filled with glowing gas. The Nebular Consortium member had no solid body at all. Instead, he was made of colorful clouds that swirled and changed shape when he talked. Right now, his gas was a calm blue color, which meant he was in a good mood. The ancient Dr. Petra sat, motionless like a giant rock formation. Her species, the Stone Walkers, looked like living mountains covered in moss and small crystals. She spoke very slowly and rarely, but when she did, everyone listened. She was over 3,000 years old and had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. Other professors filled the remaining seats. There was Dr. Flux from the Energy Beings, who looked like a dancing flame inside a glass suit. Dr. Hive spoke for the Collectorate, a species where millions of small creatures shared one mind. Commander Bolt represented the machine intelligence, his robot body gleaming silver and gold. Professor Zethkari took his place at the head of the table. "Welcome, colleagues," he said, his voice echoing strangely because of his crystal throat. "Today we discuss a newly discovered species from the outer rim of the galaxy. Dr. Veltara will present her findings about the humans from planet Earth." Dr. Veltara's compound eyes glittered with what looked like amusement. Her mechanical chair moved her closer to the table's center. "Thank you, Professor Zethkari. I have spent 6 months studying this primitive species, and I must say, they are even more backward than we initially thought." She waved one of her 4 arms, and holographic images appeared above the table. The aliens saw a blue and green planet covered with swirling white clouds. "This is Earth," Dr. Veltara explained, "the 3rd planet from a small yellow star. The dominant species calls themselves humans." More images appeared. Cities with tall buildings, roads filled with vehicles, and crowds of bipedal creatures walking. Around, the humans looked small and weak compared to most of the aliens in the room. They had only 2 arms, 2 legs, and their skin was soft and pink or brown instead of armored or crystalline. "As you can see," Dr. Veltara continued, "they have achieved some basic technology. They can fly in primitive aircraft and have built simple computers. However, their social organization is completely chaotic." Dr. Quinther's gaseous form shifted to yellow, showing his curiosity. "Chaotic? Please explain." Dr. Veltara clicked her mandibles happily. "They have no central planning, authority, no unified government, no logical resource distribution system. Look at this." New images showed different parts of Earth. Some areas had gleaming cities with tall towers, while others showed small villages with simple huts. Some humans wore expensive clothes and rode in fancy vehicles, while others had torn clothing and walked barefoot. Complete inefficiency, Dr. Veltara announced. Resources are distributed randomly. Some humans have far too much, while others have almost nothing. There is no logic to their system at all. Dr. Petra spoke in her slow, deep voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. Perhaps they have not yet evolved proper social organization. Exactly. Dr. Veltara's excitement made her click louder. They are stuck in a primitive stage of development. Instead of working together like civilized species, they compete against each other constantly. They even fight wars over resources that could be easily shared through proper central planning. Commander Bolt's robot voice was flat and electronic. Their inefficiency ratings are extremely high. A properly programmed AI could distribute their resources with 97.3% greater efficiency. Dr. Hive spoke with the combined voice of millions of small creatures. We find it disturbing that they act as individuals instead of for the good of their species. How can they survive without unity of purpose? Professor Zethkari nodded his crystal head. Dr. Veltara, what is your recommendation for classification? Stage 2 primitive, she replied without hesitation. Barely above hunter-gatherers. They show some technical ability, but lack the social evolution necessary for true civilization. I recommend minimal contact protocols. Several aliens murmured. Agreement. Stage 2 primitive was very low on their scale. It meant the species was not ready for galactic society and should be left alone to develop naturally. If they survived at all, Dr. Flux's flame-like body flickered as he spoke. Have you observed their decision-making processes? Do they show any collective intelligence? Dr. Veltara made a sound like metal scraping metal, which was her species' way of laughing. Collective intelligence? They cannot even agree on simple things. Their planet is divided into hundreds of separate groups called nations, and these nations often fight each other. Within each nation, smaller groups called corporations compete for resources. It is complete chaos. Fascinating, Doctor. Quinther said, his gas shifting to orange with interest. They have survived despite this chaos? Somehow, yes, Dr. Veltara admitted, but their survival is clearly accidental. Any properly organized species would have eliminated them long ago through superior efficiency. Professor Zethkari considered this information. The Galactic Academic Council had studied thousands of species over the millennia. Most followed predictable patterns of development. First came basic tool use, then organized agriculture, then centralized government, then space travel, and finally membership in galactic civilization. Species that did not follow this pattern usually destroyed themselves or remained primitive forever. Professor, Dr. Veltara continued, I have actually captured a specimen for further study. A young human male who was aboard a small research vessel that wandered into our territory. I thought we could conduct a direct intelligence assessment before making our final classification. This caused excited discussion among the council members. Direct contact with primitive species was rare and required special protocols. Where is this specimen now? Professor Zethkari asked. In Containment Bay 7. He appears to be some kind of scholar or teacher. The ship's computer identified him as an expert in something called economics, which seems to be their primitive attempt at resource management. Dr. Petra's ancient voice rumbled like distant thunder. It may be interesting to observe how a primitive mind attempts to understand resource allocation. Indeed, Professor Zethkari agreed. We shall conduct the assessment tomorrow. Dr. Veltara, prepare your standard primitive intelligence tests. This should be quite educational for our students. As the meeting ended and the various aliens dispersed to their quarters, none of them imagined that the small human sleeping in Containment Bay 7 was about to challenge everything they believed about civilization itself. They saw Jake Murphy as just another primitive specimen to be catalogued and forgotten. They had no idea that within 24 hours, their entire understanding of what made a species advanced would be turned completely upside down. Jake Murphy slowly opened his eyes and immediately knew something was very wrong. The ceiling above him was perfectly white and seemed to glow with its own light. There were no visible light bulbs or fixtures anywhere. The walls around him were the same glowing white, and they curved in a way that made the room feel like the inside of an egg. He sat up carefully on what felt like the most comfortable bed he had ever been on, even though it looked like a simple white platform. His head felt fuzzy, like he was waking up from the deepest sleep of his life. The last thing he remembered was being aboard the research vessel Endeavour, with his colleague Dr. Lisa Park, studying economic patterns in remote colonies. Then there had been lights. Bright, impossible lights that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The ship's alarms had started screaming, but before Jake could even understand what was happening, everything went dark. Now he was here, wherever here was. Jake stood up and walked to what he thought might be a wall. As he got closer, the surface became transparent, like looking through glass. Outside was the deep black of space, filled with more stars than he had ever seen. But these stars were wrong somehow. The patterns were completely unfamiliar, and some of them were colors that seemed impossible. Where am I? He whispered to himself. As if responding to his voice, a section of the wall simply disappeared, creating a doorway. Jake jumped back, his heart racing. Through the opening, he could see a hallway that stretched further than he could see, with the same glowing white walls. 3 figures walked through the doorway, and Jake's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The first was tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of blue and green crystals. It had 4 arms and 3 eyes on stalks that moved independently. The second looked like a giant insect covered in black armor, walking on 2 legs, but with 4 arms that moved constantly. The third was the strangest of all. It seemed to be made of colored gas or smoke, contained inside a clear, walking suit. Jake's legs felt weak, and he sat down hard on the bed. His scientific mind was screaming that this was impossible, but his eyes told him it was real. The crystal being spoke first, and somehow Jake could understand the words perfectly, even though he was sure it was not speaking English. Greetings, human specimen. I am Professor Zefkari of the Galactic Academic Council. Do not be afraid. You will not be harmed. Galactic Academic Council? Jake managed to say, "You're aliens, real aliens." The insect creature made a sound like metal, scraping against metal. Yes, we are what you would call aliens. I am Dr. Veltara. We have brought you here to conduct some simple tests. The gas creature spoke next, its voice sounding like wind through leaves. I am Dr. Quinther. We wish to understand your species better. You should feel honored. Few primitive species receive this attention. Jake's mind was racing. Everything he knew about the universe had just been turned upside down. But despite his fear, his analytical training kicked in. These beings were clearly far more advanced than humans. Their technology was beyond anything he could imagine. The fact that they could translate their speech for him, that they had ships capable of traveling between stars, that they had apparently captured him without any effort at all. It all pointed to a civilization that was centuries, maybe millennia ahead of humanity. Primitive species? Jake asked. Is that what you think we are? Dr. Veltara's compound eyes seemed to glitter with amusement. Think? We know. We have studied your planet for months. Your social organization is completely chaotic. You have no central planning, no unified government, no logical resource distribution. You are barely above the level of animals. Jake felt A flash of anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. "What kind of tests do you want to do?" Professor Zethkari moved closer, his crystal skin reflecting the room's light. "Nothing harmful. We simply want to measure your cognitive abilities, your capacity for learning and problem-solving. We do this with all newly discovered species." "And then what happens?" "Then we classify your species and decide what level of contact, if any, is appropriate," Dr. Quinther explained. His gaseous form shifted to a pale yellow color. "Most species, at your level of development, are left alone to evolve naturally." Dr. Veltara made her scraping laugh sound again. "If they survive their own primitive behaviors, which most do not." Jake realized he was not just being tested as an individual. The results of these tests would determine how these advanced beings treated all of humanity. The weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. "What do the tests involve?" he asked. Professor Zethkari gestured with one of his forearms, and the white wall behind him lit up with images. "Simple cognitive assessments. Mathematical problems, pattern recognition, basic physics concepts. Nothing that should be difficult for a member of your species' intellectual class." The first test appeared on the wall. It was a basic algebra problem that Jake could have solved in high school. He walked over and touched the wall, discovering that it responded to his touch like a computer screen. He solved the problem quickly. More problems appeared. Geometric patterns to complete, simple physics questions about gravity and motion, basic chemistry problems. Jake worked through them all easily, but he noticed that the three aliens were exchanging glances that seemed almost disappointed. "These are very simple," Jake said. "Don't you have anything more challenging?" Dr. Veltara's mandibles clicked together rapidly. "More challenging? These tests are designed to measure the cognitive capacity of developing species. The fact that you find them simple is unexpected. What level did you expect me to perform?" Jake asked. "Stage 2 primitive," Dr. Quinther admitted, his gas shifting to an orange color. "Based on our observations of your planet's social chaos." Jake was beginning to understand. These beings had looked at human society and seen only chaos and inefficiency. They had no idea that what looked like chaos from the outside might actually be a sophisticated system they did not understand. Professor Zethkari seemed to sense his thoughts. "You seem surprised by our assessment. Do you disagree with our classification of your species?" "I think," Jake said carefully, "that you might be judging us by standards that don't apply to how we actually work." Dr. Veltara's compound eyes focused on him intently. "Explain." "Well, you keep talking about central planning and unified government as signs of an advanced civilization. But what if those things are not actually the best way to organize a society?" This caused all three aliens to stop moving. Professor Zethkari's stalk swiveled to focus on Jake. Dr. Quinther's gas shifted to a deep red color. Dr. Veltara's mandibles stopped clicking entirely. "Not the best way?" Dr. Veltara finally said. "How can you have efficient resource distribution without central planning? How can you coordinate the actions of millions of individuals without unified control?" Jake realized he had their attention. "No, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. We do coordinate millions of people. We do distribute resources efficiently. We just do it in a way that looks like chaos from the outside." "Impossible," Dr. Veltara said flatly. "We have observed your planet. Resources are distributed randomly. Some humans have far too much, while others have almost nothing. There is no logic to your system." "There is logic," Jake insisted. "It's just not the kind of logic you're looking for. Your mistake is thinking that order can only come from control. But what if I told you that the most sophisticated systems in the universe create order from apparent chaos?" Professor Zethkari leaned forward, his crystal skin brightening slightly. "You are claiming your species has developed a form of organization that we have not encountered?" "I'm claiming that your classification system is missing something fundamental about how complex systems can work," Jake said. "You're looking at human society the way someone might look at an ant colony and see only chaos, not realizing that the apparent randomness is actually a sophisticated form of collective intelligence." Dr. Quinther's gas swirled faster, cycling through colors Jake had not seen before. "Collective intelligence? But your species acts as individuals, not as a unified collective." "Exactly," Jake said. "That's the point. Individual action creating collective intelligence. Competition creating cooperation. Chaos creating order." The three aliens stared at him in silence. Jake could feel that he had said something that challenged their fundamental assumptions about how civilization worked. Dr. Veltara finally spoke, her voice less certain than before. "You are suggesting that your chaotic resource distribution system is actually sophisticated?" "I'm suggesting," Jake said, "that what you call chaos is actually the most advanced economic system in the galaxy. And if you give me 5 minutes, I can prove it." The white room fell completely silent after Jake made his bold claim. The three alien professors stared at him with expressions that Jake was beginning to learn meant disbelief and amusement. Dr. Veltara was the first to break the silence, making her metal-scraping laugh sound that echoed off the curved walls. "5 minutes?" she said, her forearms moving in what looked like dismissive gestures. "You believe you can explain in 5 minutes why your chaotic system is superior to thousands of years of proven galactic civilization?" Professor Zethkari. Crystal skin flickered with different colors, which Jake was starting to understand meant he was thinking hard. "Dr. Veltara, perhaps we should listen to what the specimen has to say. Scientific curiosity demands that we examine all possibilities." "Scientific curiosity?" Dr. Veltara's compound eyes turned toward the crystal professor. "This creature comes from a species that cannot even organize basic resource distribution. They fight wars over materials that could be easily shared through proper central planning. What could they possibly teach us about civilization?" Dr. Quinther's gaseous form swirled inside his transparent suit, shifting from red to purple to orange. "I admit I am curious. The humans solved our cognitive tests far more easily than expected. Perhaps there is something we have missed in our observations." Dr. Veltara's mandibles clicked rapidly, showing her growing frustration. "What we missed is that this particular specimen might be slightly above average for his species. It does not change the fundamental chaos of their social organization." Jake watched this exchange with growing understanding. These beings were incredibly advanced technologically, but they all seemed to think the same way about how societies should work. They believed that intelligence and organization could only come from the top down, from central control and unified planning. "May I ask you something?" Jake said, interrupting their discussion. Professor Zethkari nodded one of his crystal eye stalks. "Proceed. How many different species are represented in your Galactic Academic Council?" 12 major civilizations," Professor Zethkari replied. "Each has achieved Stage 7 advanced classification or higher." "And do they all organize their societies the same way?" Dr. Veltara's eyes glittered. "Of course. All advanced species discover the same fundamental truths about efficient organization, central planning, unified control, logical resource distribution. It is the only way to achieve true civilization." "Interesting," Jake said. "So you have 12 different species, from completely different evolutionary backgrounds, different planets, different biological needs, and they all came up with exactly the same solution?" "Yes," Dr. Quinther said, his gas shifting to a confident blue. "It proves that our methods are universally correct." Jake smiled, which seemed to confuse the aliens. Or it proves that you only accept species into your council if they think exactly like you do. What happens to species that organize differently? The three professors exchanged glances. Professor Zethkari spoke carefully. Species that cannot achieve proper social organization typically remain at primitive levels indefinitely, or they destroy themselves through internal conflict. So you have never encountered a highly successful species that organizes differently than you do. There are no successful species that organize differently, Dr. Veltara said firmly. Chaos leads to inefficiency. Inefficiency leads to waste. Waste leads to conflict and eventual collapse. Jake felt his excitement growing. These beings were incredibly intelligent, but they had a massive blind spot. They had created a galactic civilization based on one model of organization, and they could not imagine that any other model could work. What if I told you, Jake said slowly, that human civilization has solved problems that your advanced species are still struggling with? Dr. Veltara made her scraping laugh again, louder this time. Such as? Innovation, Jake said simply. This got their attention. Dr. Quinder's gas stopped swirling and turned a deep green. Professor Zethkari's eye stalks focused intently on Jake. Explain, Professor Zethkari said. How long has it been since your species made a major technological breakthrough? Jake asked. The crystal professor was quiet for a long moment. We have achieved technological stability. Our systems are highly efficient and require little improvement. That is not what I asked. When did you last invent something completely new? Dr. Veltara's mandibles stopped clicking. Dr. Quinther shifted to a nervous yellow color. Our technology is already highly advanced, Dr. Veltara said defensively. We have achieved near-perfect efficiency in all areas. Which means you have stopped innovating, Jake said. Your central planning systems have eliminated the conditions that create new ideas. Impossible, Dr. Veltara snapped. Central planning is the most efficient way to direct research and development. Our scientists work on the most important problems as determined by our analysis committees. And who decides what problems are? Most important? The planning committees, obviously. And who serves on the planning committees? Professor Zethkari saw where Jake was going. Individuals selected for their expertise and proven judgment. So the same people who created your current systems decide what new systems to develop? The room fell silent again. Jake could see that he had hit on something significant. You have created perfectly stable civilizations, Jake continued. But stability is the enemy of innovation. Innovation requires risk, uncertainty, failure. Your planning committees cannot plan for ideas that do not exist yet. Dr. Quinther's gas began swirling faster. Are you suggesting that chaos promotes technological advancement? I am suggesting that what you call chaos is actually a sophisticated system for generating and testing new ideas. Human civilization has developed more new technology in the last century than your species have developed in the last millennium. Dr. Veltara's compound eyes focused on Jake with intensity that made him uncomfortable. That is a very large claim for a primitive species to make. Is it? Jake challenged. When did your species last double their energy production? When did they last increase their computational power by orders of magnitude? When did they last discover new materials or develop new manufacturing processes? The three aliens looked at each other uncertainly. Professor Zethkari finally spoke. Our systems have been stable and efficient for over 2,000 years. We saw no need for dramatic changes. And in that same time period, humans went from riding horses to traveling to other planets. We went from simple mechanical devices to computers that can process information faster than biological brains. We went from burning wood for energy to splitting atoms. Primitive, wasteful progress, Dr. Veltara said, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence. Achieved through chaos and conflict. Achieved through competition and innovation. Jake. Corrected. Achieved through a system that rewards new ideas and punishes stagnation. Achieved through what you call chaos, but what is actually the most sophisticated organizational system in the galaxy. Dr. Quinthe's gas had turned a color Jake had never seen before, shifting between purple and gold. You are claiming that your chaotic economic system is responsible for your rapid technological advancement? I am claiming that our economic system is not chaotic at all. It is a distributed intelligence network that processes information and coordinates human behavior more efficiently than any central planning system ever could. Professor Zethkari leaned forward, his crystal skin brightening. A distributed intelligence network? Every human decision, every purchase, every investment, every business choice sends information through the system. Prices rise and fall to show scarcity and abundance. Competition eliminates inefficiency. Innovation is rewarded with profit. Failure is punished with loss. The entire system learns and adapts constantly. Dr. Valtara's mandibles began clicking. Rapidly. You are describing economic chaos. Random decisions by uninformed individuals cannot possibly be more efficient than careful planning by experts. That is exactly what you do not understand, Jake said, feeling his confidence growing. Individual decisions are not random. They are responses to information. And when you have millions of people responding to different pieces of information, you create a system that can process more data and adapt faster than any centralized computer. The three aliens stared at him in silence. Jake could see that he had presented them with ideas that challenged everything they believed about how intelligent systems worked. Professor Zethkari spoke slowly. You are asking us to believe that chaos creates order. I am asking you to believe that what looks like chaos to you is actually a form of order that you have never encountered before. And if you give me 5 minutes to explain how it works, you will understand why human civilization advances so much faster than yours. Dr. Valtara made a sound that was not quite laughter. Very well, primitive human. You have 5 minutes to explain how chaos is superior to intelligence. This should be most entertaining. Jake took a deep breath. Everything depended on the next 5 minutes. Not just his own fate, but the fate of his entire species. Jake stood in the center of the white room, looking at the three alien professors who represented the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. He had 5 minutes to explain something that might save his species from being dismissed as primitive. Forever. He took a deep breath and began. Imagine, Jake said, that you need to organize a dinner party for 1 million people. Different people like different foods. Some are allergic to certain ingredients. Some have more money to spend than others. Some live far away. Some live close by. How would you plan this party? Dr. Valtara's mandibles clicked impatiently. Obviously, a central planning committee would survey all participants, determine the most efficient menu, calculate optimal portions, and distribute food according to logical principles. And how long would that take? Jake asked Professor Zethkari. Crystal eye stalks swiveled as he considered. For 1 million individuals? Perhaps several months to gather all necessary information and create an optimal plan. Now imagine, Jake continued, that instead of planning the party yourself, you simply announced that anyone could bring food to sell, and anyone could buy whatever they wanted at whatever price the sellers thought was fair. Dr. Quinthe's gas shifted to a confused orange. That would be complete chaos. People would bring too much of some foods and not enough of others. Prices would be random. Many people would go hungry while others had too much. Would they? Jake asked. Let me walk you through what would actually happen. The first person to arrive brings sandwiches and starts selling them for, let's say, 5 credits each. Soon, other people arrive with sandwiches too. Now there are Too many sandwiches and not enough customers. What happens? The three aliens looked at each other uncertainly. Professor Zethkari spoke first. The suppliers would compete, presumably. Exactly. They would lower their prices to attract customers. Maybe sandwiches dropped to 3 credits. But now, seeing that sandwiches are cheap and plentiful, fewer people decide to bring sandwiches tomorrow. Instead, they bring soup, because they noticed there was not much soup today. Jake could see he had their attention now. Dr. Veltara had stopped clicking her mandibles. Dr. Cointhery's gas was moving more slowly, in careful patterns. The price of soup starts high because there is not much of it. Let's say 10 credits per bowl. This high price tells everyone 2 things. Soup is scarce, and bringing soup tomorrow could be profitable. So tomorrow, more people bring soup. The price comes down as supply increases. This is basic supply and demand, Dr. Veltara said dismissively. Even primitive species understand this concept. You are right, it is basic, Jake agreed. But now imagine this happening not just with food, but with millions of different products and services, all at the same time, across an entire planet, with billions of people participating. Professor Zethkari's crystal skin began to flicker, with different colors. The computational requirements would be enormous. Exactly, Jake said excitedly. Your central planning committee would need to track millions of variables, process billions of preferences, calculate optimal distributions, and update everything constantly as conditions changed. It would require the most powerful computer in the galaxy, which is why central planning by advanced AI systems is necessary, Dr. Veltara said. But that is just it, Jake said. We do not need a computer to do these calculations. The system does them automatically. Every price in our economy is a calculation. Every purchase is a vote. Every business decision is an analysis of what people need and want. Dr. Quinder's gas shifted to a deep blue, which Jake was learning meant intense concentration. You are saying that individual decisions somehow coordinate to create collective intelligence? Not somehow, Jake said. I can tell you exactly how. When the price of something goes up, it sends a signal to everyone in the economy. The signal says, this thing is becoming scarce. Use less of it. Find alternatives, or figure out how to make more of it. When the price goes down, the signal says, this thing is abundant. You can use more of it. Jake walked to the wall and gestured for it to display images. To his amazement, it responded to his thoughts, showing simple diagrams as he explained. Look at this, he said, as a diagram appeared showing supply and demand curves. This is not just economics. This is information processing. Every price change carries information about what is happening in the world. A drought in one region makes food prices rise there, which tells people in other regions to send food. No central planner needed to coordinate this. The price system does it automatically. Professor Zethkari leaned forward, his eye stalks focused intently on the display. You are describing prices as a communication system. Yes, but it is more than communication. It is computation. When a farmer decides which crops to plant based on current prices, he is performing a calculation about what society needs most. When a factory decides which products to make based on profit margins, it is solving an optimization problem. When a student chooses which skills to learn based on salary expectations, she is predicting future economic needs. Dr. Veltara's compound eyes were fixed on Jake now. But these individuals do not have perfect information. They cannot see the whole system. They do not need perfect information, Jake explained. They only need local information. The farmer does not need to know why wheat prices are rising. Maybe there was a drought somewhere. Maybe demand increased. Maybe a war disrupted supply chains. He just needs to know that wheat prices are rising, which tells him that society values wheat more than before. Jake could see that he was reaching them. Dr. Cointher's gas was cycling through colors he had never seen, and Professor Zethkari's crystal skin was brightening noticeably. "This is why our system looks chaotic to you," Jake continued. "You see millions of people making individual decisions without central coordination, and you think it is inefficient. But what you are really seeing is a distributed computer with billions of processors, all working on pieces of the same massive calculation." "What calculation?" Professor Zethkari asked. "The calculation of how to use limited resources to satisfy unlimited human wants. It is the most complex optimization problem in the universe, and we solve it every day without even thinking about it." Double quotes. Dr. Veltara was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice less certain than before. "But surely this leads to waste. Without central coordination, there must be duplication of effort, misallocation of resources." "There is some waste," Jake admitted. "But there is also something your central planning systems cannot achieve: innovation through failure. In our system, when someone has a bad idea, they lose their own money. The market eliminates bad ideas quickly. When someone has a good idea, they make money, which gives them resources to develop even better ideas. And innovation is essential for advancement," Dr. Cointher said slowly. "Yes, but here is the crucial part," Jake said, his excitement growing. "Innovation cannot be planned. By definition, if you could plan an innovation, it would not be innovative. Real breakthroughs come from people trying things that the experts think will not work." Jake gestured to the wall again, and it showed images of human technological progress. "Look at our history. Most of our greatest innovations came from people working outside the established systems. Computers were built by hobbyists in garages. The internet was created by researchers who were supposed to be working on something else. Space travel was pioneered by people who were told it was impossible." Professor Zethkari's crystal skin was now glowing brighter than Jake had ever seen. "Your system rewards risk-taking." "Our system requires risk-taking," Jake corrected. "If you want to succeed in business, you have to offer something better than what already exists. You have to take risks. You have to try new things. And because people are risking their own resources, they are very careful about which risks they take." Dr. Veltara spoke slowly. "So your economic chaos is actually a selection mechanism, like evolution, but for ideas." "Exactly," Jake said. "Bad ideas die quickly because they lose money. Good ideas survive and reproduce because they make money. Over time, this process creates increasingly sophisticated technologies and services." The room fell silent. Jake could see that he had given the three professors something entirely new to think about. They had spent their entire lives believing that intelligence and organization could only come from central planning and unified control. Now he was showing them a system where intelligence emerged from the bottom up, where coordination happened. Without a coordinator, where order arose from apparent chaos. Dr. Cointher finally spoke, his gas swirling in slow, thoughtful patterns. "You are describing artificial evolution applied to economic systems, and to ideas, and to technologies, and to social institutions," Jake added. "Everything in human society is constantly evolving through competition and selection. We do not just have an economy. We have an evolutionary machine that creates better solutions to human problems." Professor Zethkari stood up, his full height impressive, even with his thin frame. "If what you say is true, then your species has developed something that we have never encountered in the galaxy. A system that gets smarter over time," Jake said. "A system that adapts to changing conditions automatically. A system that rewards innovation and punishes stagnation." The white room stayed completely silent for what felt like hours, though Jake knew it had only been minutes. The three alien professors stood motionless, processing everything he had just explained. Professor Zethkari's crystal skin was flickering, through colors Jake had never seen before. Dr. Quinther's gaseous form had stopped moving entirely, frozen in deep thought. Dr. Veltara's compound eyes stared at Jake without blinking. Finally, Professor Zethkari spoke, his voice filled with something that sounded like wonder. You are describing a form of collective intelligence that emerges from individual competition rather than cooperation. Yes, Jake said simply. Competition creates cooperation, but not the kind of cooperation you understand. Our cooperation is not planned or forced. It happens naturally because people benefit from helping each other in voluntary exchanges. Dr. Veltara's mandibles began clicking again, but the sound was different now, less dismissive, more uncertain. This is difficult to accept. Our entire understanding of civilization is based on the principle that intelligent organization requires central control. What if your understanding is incomplete? Jake asked gently. What if there are forms of intelligence that your civilizations never discovered because you solved the organization problem too early, in a different way? Dr. Quinther's gas began moving again, shifting to colors that seemed to indicate deep thought mixed with excitement. You mentioned that our civilizations have achieved technological stability. We have always considered this a strength. It is a strength for maintaining what you have, Jake agreed. But it is a weakness for discovering what you do not have. Yet, stability prevents the kind of creative destruction that drives innovation. Professor Zethkari walked closer to Jake, his forearms moving in gestures that seemed almost reverent. Creative destruction? Old businesses must fail for new businesses to succeed, Jake explained. Old technologies must become obsolete for new technologies to emerge. Old ideas must be challenged for new ideas to develop. Your planning systems prevent this destruction, which means they also prevent creation. The three aliens exchanged glances that Jake was beginning to understand meant they were communicating with each other in ways he could not perceive. After a moment, Dr. Veltara spoke. Our civilizations have indeed experienced what you might call stagnation, she admitted. We solved the basic problems of resource distribution, eliminated conflict, achieved technological adequacy, but we have not made major advances in centuries. Because you eliminated the conditions that create advancement, Jake said. You eliminated scarcity, so there is no pressure to innovate. You eliminated competition, so there is no reward for taking risks. You eliminated failure, so there is no learning from mistakes. Dr. Quinther's form brightened considerably. But humans still experience scarcity, competition, and failure. These drive your system forward. Exactly. And that is why we have advanced so rapidly, despite being younger and less technically sophisticated than your species. Our system is designed to generate new solutions constantly. Professor Zethkari's eye stalks swiveled to focus on specific points in the room, a sign Jake had learned meant he was thinking very hard. You are suggesting that what we classified as primitive chaos is actually advanced organization that we failed to recognize. I am suggesting that there might be different kinds of advancement, Jake said. You achieved advancement through planning and control. We achieved advancement through competition and adaptation. Both work, but they work differently. Dr. Veltara stood up abruptly, her mechanical chair adjusting to her movement. This has implications for our entire classification system. If organizational sophistication can emerge from individual action rather than central planning, then we may have misclassified many species. How many species have you encountered that organize similarly to humans? Jake asked. The three aliens were quiet for a long moment. Professor Zethkari finally answered. None that achieved significant technological development. Species with decentralized, competitive social structures typically classified as Stage 2 or Stage 3 primitive. And what happened to them? Most were left to develop naturally, with minimal contact protocols, Dr. Quinther said, his gaze shifting to what Jake now recognized as embarrassment. So there might be other species out there that have developed sophisticated systems you do not understand, but you classified them as primitive and ignored them. Dr. Valtara's mandibles stopped clicking entirely. The implications are ... significant. Jake felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility. He was not just defending humanity anymore. He was potentially changing how these advanced beings understood intelligence and civilization itself. "May I ask you something?" Jake said. "What is the biggest problem facing your galactic civilization right now?" The three professors exchanged those mysterious glances again. Professor Zethkari spoke carefully. "Economic stagnation. Despite our advanced technology and efficient planning, growth has slowed dramatically across all member civilizations. Some economists predict eventual decline." When did this stagnation begin? Approximately 800 years ago, when we achieved what we considered optimal resource allocation and eliminated most sources of inefficiency. Jake smiled. "You eliminated the inefficiency that drives efficiency. You solved the problems that create solutions." Dr. Quinther's gaze swirled. "Faster. Are you suggesting that our economic problems could be solved by introducing elements of your chaotic system?" "I am suggesting that what you call chaos might be exactly what your civilizations need to start growing again. Competition, risk-taking, creative destruction, the possibility of failure. These are not bugs in the system. They are features." "Professor." Ethkari was glowing so brightly, now that Jake had to look away. "You are proposing that we deliberately introduce instability into our stable systems." "I am proposing that you consider the possibility that stability and advancement might be mutually exclusive, at least to some degree. Perfect stability means no change. No change means no growth. No growth means eventual decline." Dr. Valtara began pacing around the room, her forearms moving in complex patterns. "This would require fundamental changes to our entire economic philosophy. Thousands of years of development would need to be reconsidered. Or," Jake said quietly, "you could just study what humans have already developed and adapt the parts that work for your civilizations." This stopped all three aliens in their tracks. They stared at Jake as if seeing him for the first time. Professor Zethkari spoke slowly. "You are suggesting that your primitive species could teach advanced galactic civilizations about economic organization. I am suggesting that maybe we are not as primitive as you thought, and maybe you are not as advanced as you thought, at least in some areas." The room fell silent again. Jake could feel the weight of what was happening. These beings were reconsidering everything they believed about intelligence, advancement, and civilization. Finally, Dr. Quinther spoke, his voice filled with excitement. "We must convene an emergency session of the full Galactic Academic Council. These findings require immediate review by all member civilizations." Dr. Valtara nodded, her earlier dismissiveness completely gone. "The human classification must be revised immediately. Stage 7 advanced at minimum, possibly higher." "Higher than Stage 7? Jake asked. Professor Zethkari's crystal skin was now glowing so brightly it illuminated the entire room. "Stage 7 is for civilizations that have achieved advanced organization within known parameters. You have described a form of organization that transcends our current understanding. This may require the creation of entirely new classification categories." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. Not only had he saved humanity from being dismissed as primitive, but he had apparently elevated them to a status higher than most of the advanced civilizations in the galaxy. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Professor Zethkari said, we begin the most important research project in galactic history. We will study human economic systems in detail. We will analyze how competitive markets create innovation and growth. We will examine how individual decision-making can create collective intelligence. Dr. Veltara added, and we will begin carefully experimenting with market-based elements in our own economies to see if we can restart the growth that we lost centuries ago. But first, Dr. Quangther said, his gas shifting to colors that seemed to indicate joy, we must return you to your species as humanity's first galactic ambassador. Your people deserve to know that they are not primitive at all. They are pioneers of a form of civilization that the galaxy has never seen before. Jake looked around the white room that had been his prison and was now the site of the most important economic lecture in galactic history. So humans will be invited to join galactic civilization? Invited? Professor Zethkari laughed, a sound like crystal chimes. Humans will be invited to teach galactic civilization. We have much to learn from your chaotic wisdom. As preparations began for Jake's return to Earth, he realized that this was just the beginning. Humanity was about to take its place not as students in galactic civilization, but as teachers of principles that could revolutionize how intelligent species organize themselves across the stars.